Okay, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sadia, for the great introduction and also for all your help with the technology which I'm not the best at. So I really do appreciate that. I wanted to get started talking a little bit about my book, Too Busy to Diet, and how it came about. My co-author and I have been working on various projects throughout the years, and we noticed that the common complaint from most of our patients was that they didn't have time to plan their meals, shop for their meals. They often had refrigerators that were bare, and they also had difficulty with meal preparation, finding the time to do that. So that's pretty much why we started to write the book. And the next thing that we found was we went over the fact that for many, many years, food was the balance for medical treatment. We think of Hippocrates as being the individual who came up with the Hippocratic oath, but this saying that food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, we have to kind of keep in mind that for many, many years, we did not have medications, so that food was the main way that we could treat different diseases and actually in some cases cure disease. I think the best example is in 1921, when insulin was discovered. Before that time, the treatment was basically centered on restricting certain foods and allowing certain foods. And after the invention of insulin, we can now treat diabetes with a medication that makes the diet more easily managed. The thing that we have to keep remembering is that food and nutrition is an evolving science. We have to be open-minded. We have to be investigative. We have to keep up to date on current scientific nutrition and research. We need to be willing to look at all the information before we make dietary change. And it is a good thing to keep in mind that dietitians do have quite a bit of education. Over 55% of our members have either master's degrees or PhDs. And starting this year, all dietitians will be required to have master's degrees. The thing also to keep in mind, and I always wonder at this, and I'm somewhat in awe when I think about it, but in 1950, medical knowledge was doubling every 50 years. So from 1950 to the year 2000, medical knowledge doubled. And since that time, medical knowledge is actually doubling every 2.5 months. So we're making a lot of different changes in the medical field, most of them due to the collaboration of people on the internet and the different meetings where people are getting together, actually even meetings like this where you can talk and converse about your progress in different areas. And again, I think it's important to think of the vaccine and how quick that evolved. And a lot of that was due to the collaboration of many scientists, which was not, you could not do that in years before. It's kind of interesting to look at how diet has changed in the last decade. We find that we're eating more calories. Over 50% of our calories are from solid fats. Almost 50% of our calories come from added sugar. And 50% of our calories are coming from soda pop, fruit drinks, dairy, and grain desserts, pizza, and whole milk. And fiber is the most underconsumed food in the diet. And this includes fruits, vegetables, and your whole grains. That's a problem area. Why is healthy eating harder than ever? A lot of it is due to the increase in convenience, takeout foods, and processed foods. We're seeing less food preparation at home. However, COVID has changed that somewhat because we have seen about 60% of American families making some of their meals at home during the week. And as the price of food has gone up, we are also seeing more people preparing things at home to keep their budgets in check. We're also seeing increased portion sizes. Americans have a hard time visualizing how much they should be eating, and we're finding a harder time finding time to either plan, shop, or prepare healthy foods. And this again is due to COVID in many regards, because with doing Zoom meetings at home and having kids at home for classes, and then after getting off the internet, you're then planning your meals and you need to be putting them together. It's really kind of tough. So our book does make it quite easy to master those skills that we once didn't have to think about all that much. It's a good thing to look at what the best diets are in the year 2022. The number one is the Mediterranean diet, which we are going to be talking about quite a bit. The Mediterranean diet is being used in particular when we talk about cholesterol for individuals who have diabetes, heart disease, and obesity, because of the fact that it is a very, very healthy diet. And it tends to keep people from being in an inflammatory type state. Weight Watchers, especially since Oprah became involved, is extremely popular, and it has been considered in 2022 to be a diet that is healthy for people. And dietitians must be on their staff to make sure that things are scientifically researched. The flexitarian diet is like a plant-based diet, but it does give you the ability to add some protein items like chicken or fish, and then some people on occasion will incorporate beef. A lot of times this is due to going out to friends' homes or restaurants to just make it easier. The Mayo Clinic diet is a very healthy diet. My niece's husband, she works at Mayo Clinic, and he started on the program and lost about 50 pounds. It's very similar to what the United States dietary guidelines are, and it does offer up in Rochester an ability to get together and network. Volumetrics is another diet. The concentration is on lean protein, and the thing that you need to be doing is choosing foods that are going to fill you up. And those types of foods would be your plants and your vegetables. You want to make sure that you're feeling full so that you are not going for more food. The worst diets of 2022, the first one is the Dukan diet, which I think, in my estimation, is one of the dumbest diets. It, at the beginning, starts you out with lean protein and oat bran. Then you go to the second week where you're getting lean meats and more oat bran. By the third week, you're getting lean meats, oat bran, and then you're allowed to add some fruit. And by the last week, you're getting more of each of those items. but it isn't really a diet that's sustainable. It's not real healthy. It's lacking in nutrients and also vitamins and minerals. The Whole30 diet is a diet that was very popular a couple years ago, and it's still pretty popular. But the thing about it is that it goes on for 30 days. And again, it's restricting carbohydrates, and it is also restricting other items that make it extremely difficult to follow. There's a lot of meal preparation involved, and by the time you're finished, you've had really enough of it. The paleo diet is a diet that is based on the Paleolithic era. That existed about 2 million years to 10,000 years ago. And it was based on the hunter-gatherer thought that we should be eating the foods that at that time, in the beginning of our existence, you could hunt for or you could gather. And those would include your meats, your fish, and things like vegetables and fruits. So that diet is rather restrictive as well. And then we have the modified keto diet. That's based pretty much on its forefather, the Atkins diet, where you are really not eating a lot of carbohydrate at all. And you have to keep in mind that the first 4 diets, you are restricting carbohydrate. And when you restrict carbohydrate, you are getting rid of fluid, and you're also breaking down muscle tissue. So a lot of times, not only do you lose weight from the fluid, but you're breaking muscle tissue down, which is not really a healthy state. So initially you get a weight loss, but then after a while, that weight comes back as soon as you start eating a regular diet. The glycemic index diet is another popular diet. I've never really understood why people followed it or why it became so popular. The glycemic index was designed for people with diabetes, and you would take 100 grams or a 4-ounce portion of a food, and then they would determine how fast, or actually how much the blood sugar would rise after you ingested that amount of food with the varying types that you would be eating. The problem is we really don't know all that much about how the normal population, how their blood sugars rise after eating foods. Not a lot of research has been done on that. The main reason why you could lose weight on that diet is because you're restricting calories, but otherwise it's not one of the types of diets that I would suggest. It's lacking in, again, the important nutrients and also vitamins and minerals. I always like to look to Michael Pollan. He has a master's degree in nutrition. He wrote a number of books. This one, The Omnivore's Dilemma, actually my son-in-law gave me this book before he married my daughter. I thought it was kind of a cool thing to give me, being a dietitian. And what he said is that we should be eating real food that looks like its original source. So if you look at a banana, it is something that you know is a legitimate food. We should not be using, we should be picking unprocessed food. So think of a food that's in a box, and you should be trying to restrict those foods and watch your portions. That's a really, really important point as well. Having problems going forward. It's really interesting to look at the statistics in the United States for prediabetes, diabetes, and obesity between the years of 1999 and 2017. And during that period, we found that 34.5% of Americans have prediabetes or had prediabetes. 10.5% of Americans had diabetes. 26.3% of those over the age of 65 have diabetes. And then from 1999 to 2017, the obesity rate was 30.5. And from 2017 to 2018, the obesity rate rose to 42.4%. And with COVID, it's been estimated that the average American gained 15 to 20 pounds a year. And I can only imagine that this would have increased the obesity rate even more. We don't have those statistics yet, but it is of concern. The obesity rate among men and women during these time periods were pretty much the same, but we did see with severe obesity, which falls at about 9.2%, the majority of people that have severe obesity are women. So there is a difference with that group. The history of how the United States allowed the population to learn about food has really evolved. I don't really understand why between 1916 and the 1940s, basically, I should say not the 1940s, it went actually all the way to the 1950s, we were concentrating mostly on feeding young children and how to teach parents how to feed their kids. And it was in a dial type form, 7 food groups. It was actually, from what people said, it was a very difficult to understand system. So that in the 1950s, up to the 1970s, they started going to the 4 food groups. The thing that's also interesting is in 1951, the American Diabetes Association, for the very first time, established a diet for people with diabetes. So we are starting to see an evolution in teaching people how to eat more healthy. In the 1970s, from 1992, we graduated to a 5-group food system where we had the 4 main food groups, and the 5th group was the foods that we should be trying to avoid. And that continued pretty much until 1992, when they came up with the pyramid, where the top of the pyramid are the foods that you should be restricting more so, and the bottom group are the foods that you should be eating more commonly. And then it evolved into 2005, where we had the My Pyramid. One thing that you should be aware of, because there is a slide that is incorrect, if you need to get to the government site, it's now called MyPlate.gov. So it's a really great website and you can check that out at your leisure, but they increase the concept of adding exercise to your daily plan. The MyPlate was started after that period, and I always find this really funny because dietitians have been using this for years. I remembered when I was a dietitian at the Diabetes and Pregnancy Center at Northwestern that I would always give my patients a paper plate with the food groups on it. It's really an excellent way of teaching the foods that you need to be concerned with. And then I would, on the back of the plate, have the dairy, and generally I would add a salad so that people would be able to fill up on the vegetables to give them more satiety. Again, the MyPlate.gov, it's this new plan. The thing that it focuses on is enjoying food. We always think of diet as being deprivation, and we're really trying to get over that concept. We want people to enjoy what they're eating. In watching portions, half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. We should be drinking water and avoiding sugary drinks and switching to fat-free or low-fat milk. We're going to be talking more about that at the end of the presentation because that has changed as well to a certain degree. Watching sodium and making sure that 50% of your grains are whole grains. As I mentioned before, the MyPlate helps with portions. I find it a really easy way to visualize the amount of foods that you should be eating. You really need to be checking your portions regularly. This is a basket that I made for one of the lectures I did, and it included a pedometer to keep track of your exercise. I am real positive about using the iWatch measuring cups. You can get these for $1 at the, well, actually, it's not $1 anymore. It's $1.25 at the dollar store. It should be the $1.25 store. And the measuring spoons, and then picking up a scale at places like Bed Bath & Beyond or Amazon or Target. And it's really important to have these tools available. Try using them at least weekly so you keep track of what portion sizes should look like. What are the benefits of regular physical activity? There's many. First of all, it helps you decrease your weight, but along with the physical activity, always remember you can't do that alone. Exercise alone, it's very difficult to lose weight by exercising without being on some type of nutrition plan. It helps us risk heart disease. It helps us with needing medication. It gives us increased energy, increased well-being, and increased overall health. One thing I wanted to mention is I work for a company called My25, and you can look it up on the internet. It's really a very interesting website. The company focuses on mentally challenged and physically challenged adults. They live in group homes, and they are given a particular diet every week. It's actually individualized for the person, and it's portion controlled. And they also get their foods from Walmart so that they can keep track at the amount of foods that are being purchased. And the thing that's so exciting about this program is the fact that they have measured outcomes in these homes. And the amount of people that have approached their BMIs is astounding. And we're finding that they are having lower levels of cholesterol, less high blood pressure, and many of them are coming off of medication. And the thing that's even more exciting is that they are feeling better about themselves, and they do get incentives. And I got a letter today, or I should say an email, that there were 2 residents at one of the homes where they were going to be buying them an item of clothing for their progress. So it's something that they can really be proud of and actually see the results of. Otherwise, they get little gifts like a air fryer, or they might get a brand new crock pot, but it's always something that the residents can use and have pride in. We're going to go over the plant-based diet. And why do people want to follow plant-based diets? Many people don't like meat. Many people are concerned about animal welfare. There are many people now with the environment where they want to decrease the carbon footprint. Others have health concerns, and others do it for religious beliefs. We've found that plant-based diets help improve blood pressure. They lower cardiovascular disease or heart disease, and also cancer. They help lower cholesterol levels, and it helps with weight control. So, and one thing I should mention is vegan diets have been found to be the healthiest diet. If you look at this plant-based, it's actually very much like the base, not the basic four, but the MyPlate, but it's for plant-based eaters. You are going to be getting more than a quarter of your foods from grains and starchy vegetables. You're going to be getting 2+ servings of fruit a day, and about 2 servings of seeds and nuts, 4+ servings of vegetables, and 3+ servings of lentils and beans. One of the things that people should keep in mind if you're concerned about the environment is that 30% of the earth is consumed by livestock. And it takes about 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. And greenhouse gases, about 6.5 pounds, are added to the atmosphere for 1/4 pound of beef, which is really quite remarkable. It's hard to believe that that much would be added to the atmosphere. And in terms of health, red meat has been linked to heart disease, stroke, elevated blood pressures, diabetes, premature death, and also certain cancers. I'm sure all of you are aware of the fact that beef prices are rising. The prices are up about 20.1% from last year due to supply chain issues. The Forbes magazine is calling it meatflation. It may be better for your wallet to start trying more vegetarian options, because we really don't know how long this is going to continue. I know in the homes at My 25, more and more of the residents are requesting meatless meals, and a lot of the homes are requesting meatless Mondays. Many families are doing meatless Mondays, where that becomes the day where they focus on going without meat products and sticking mostly with vegetables. We're going to cover the Mediterranean diet. And this particular diet, not only is it being used because it's a healthy diet, it's also being utilized for individuals who have diabetes and also heart disease, because it tends to be extremely helpful in the treatment of those conditions. We start at the top of the pyramid, and we have meat. And we're encouraging people to eat your meat products only once a month. Sweets weekly, same thing for eggs, poultry, and seafood. And daily, we're encouraging people to consume dairy, olive oil, fruits, beans and nuts, vegetables, seeds, and grains. And also getting 6 glasses of water in a day. And most people are consuming a glass of red wine. Main reason being is that it contains resveratrol that helps with the clotting of red blood cells in the blood vessels. So that is an extremely important thing. We start thinking about where in the world the Mediterranean diet is consumed. There are 22 countries This map does not include all of them. If you look over to the left, we have Spain and Portugal, which you could also add in there. But these countries are the ones that are consuming the Mediterranean style diets. And more people in the United States are going that way as well. What exactly are some of the diet's benefits? It lengthens life. And if you think of Italians, they have the highest lifespan. And when I was walking around Italy, it was amazing seeing all these little old men in their groups talking all day long, and so much older than the people that we see in the United States. It lowers the bad cholesterol and increases good cholesterol. It promotes heart health. It enhances memory and brain function. It reduces asthma, allergies, and arthritis. It improves blood sugars. It supports weight loss and maintenance, and it prevents many forms of cancer. There are definite dietary practices that improve health, and these include watching your cholesterol and fat intakes. We'll talk more about that because this is mostly for people with a history of diabetes, heart disease, and family history of heart disease, where we are focusing on different things that you should be focused on. Increase fiber intake, increase calcium and vitamin D intakes, watching your sodium, and using your sugar with caution. You see here the cholesterol gathering in an artery or vein. And I want you to take a look at this. I want you to think about this when we get to the calcium section, because you can see that the cholesterol is covering most of that blood vessel. And as a result of that, it's very difficult for the blood to get through. And when the blood vessel is being obstructed, there's more of a chance that you're going to wind up with heart attack. But cholesterol does have a very important function. I think today is a good day to keep this in mind. It helps us to insulate the body, and we certainly do need it. I'm freezing most of the day during the last week. It forms cell membranes, and it also makes hormones. So we cannot do without cholesterol. And where is it found? About 1,000 milligrams of cholesterol is made by the liver daily. It's obtained by animal products in the diet. You can see the dairy products here and also the meat products. Cholesterol is contained in high-fat dairy products, egg yolks, liver and organ meats, high-fat meat, and poultry. How can I make wise food choices? With your reduction of fat in the diet, you need to try to decrease fat. Saturated fat, again, that's more for individuals who have heart disease, diabetes, or family history of heart disease. Your trans fats, those and many products that are on the market have been removed. You can see that when you're reading the labels, and consuming less cholesterol. We should be eating fish about 2 or 3 times a week, substituting polyunsaturated and monosaturated fats for saturated fats to allow for cholesterol lowering, and increasing soluble fat, because soluble fat allows cholesterol to be removed from the body. We need to be choosing lower fat and non-fat dairy products. Again, we're going to talk about this. That's for your people with diabetes, heart disease, and family histories. Choose lean meats, decrease hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated oils that are used in food products. Use tub margarines with plant sterols as the best choice for margarine or butter. And the plant sterols are important to consider. They are present in your fruits and your vegetables, and plant sterols mimic the structure of cholesterol. And because they mimic the cholesterol structure, they allow cholesterol to be removed from the body. We now are starting to advocate that you can have butter in moderation. That should not present a problem. And if you can, pick tub or liquid forms in place of stick margarine. Next thing we need to focus on is sodium. Sodium is an electrolyte. It allows the balance of fluids in the blood. It also helps with transmitting nerve impulses, helping with the contraction and relaxation of muscles. So you do need a certain amount of sodium. Every single person needs salt or sodium to function, but almost every American consumes more than they need. What are some of the risks of increased sodium use? It's tied to high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, and kidney disease. The DASH program, Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension study, found that less than 1,500 milligrams of sodium daily lowered blood pressure. It can also increase stomach cancer, it can worsen asthma, and it can increase urine calcium loss that can cause bone loss and also risk of kidney stones. There really is too much sodium in today's diet. About over 75% or 2/3 of our dietary sodium comes from processed and prepared foods. The rest of it comes from natural sources, 6% added while you're eating, and 5% added while cooking. Highly processed foods and eating out on a daily basis will increase your sodium intake, and your processed and packaged foods are loaded with sodium. Salt is used to aid in preservation and also flavor. Condiments are also very high in sodium, and fast food restaurants use salt to flavor the food. It's really important to remember that one item can add a day's sodium to your diet. The best ways to reduce sodium are to not use salt at the table, use no salt or reduce salt in cooking, avoid processed foods and fast foods. And when you're actually trying to work towards that goal of reducing sodium, keep in mind that a teaspoon of salt contains 2,300 milligrams of sodium. You need to read the food labels to check the sodium content. You need to be buying more fresh and frozen vegetables without added salt. Decrease your consumption of highly processed foods and limit the amount that you're eating out. Increase the amount of cooking at home to make sure that you know how much sodium is being added. This is one of my little tricks because I do like to add some salt to my meat products if they don't have a sauce on them that it's not low sodium. This is called Salt Sense. It's a real salt product and it contains 30% less sodium. The way they do this is to actually puff up the sodium molecule, and it takes up more space. And when you're salting your foods, you're getting a third less of the salt. So instead of a teaspoon of sodium, or salt rather, being equal to 2,300 milligrams, a teaspoon of salt sense is less than 800 milligrams. What exactly is the importance of fiber in the diet? It's probably the most common omission in the American diet. And why is it so important? It is the carbohydrate portion of plants that our bodies cannot digest or absorb. And there are two types, soluble and insoluble. Most of our foods are a combination of both. And they help in reducing constipation by providing bulk to the stool so that the food travels faster down the GI tract. If you have food due to constipation that's sitting in the GI tract for prolonged periods of time, it is not a healthy situation. And that's why we see an increase in cancers such as colon cancer. And when people increase the amount of fiber in their diet, you see a reduction in colon cancer. It helps with irritable bowel syndrome. It helps with diabetic control to help with controlling blood sugar levels. And it aids in weight loss by giving you a sense of fullness. The recommended intake daily for men is 38 grams a day, for women, 25 grams a day. If you decide you want to increase the amount of fiber you're getting, you have to be extremely careful, because if you do it all at once, you're going to wind up with gas, bloating, diarrhea, intense intestinal discomfort. And it's important that you increase the amount of fiber 5 grams per day each week, and make sure that you're drinking plenty of fluids or water to decrease those type of symptoms. Some of the ways to get adequate fiber that are quite easy is to search for your high fiber cereals. These would include General Mills Fiber One and Kellogg's All Bran. And just consuming one serving of those cereals gives you 13 grams of fiber per serving. And if you add a fruit to that, you're getting approximately 50% of the daily total. You could also try 100% whole wheat English muffin. You can try a homemade bran muffin and a piece of fruit. And at lunch, you can go with Brownberry or Pepperidge Farm whole grain bread with double or extra fiber. Those slices have about 6 grams of fiber per slice. And if you add a piece of fresh fruit, you're getting about 14 grams of fiber from your lunch. And then when you go to dinner, most of your vegetables contain 2 to 3 grams of fiber in a half cup serving. And then if you add kidney, pinto, lentil, or black-eyed peas, you will add about 10 to 13 grams of fiber in a cup. And you can use them in soups with rice or in salads. Then you can add a fresh fruit and a fresh salad, and you can get the amount of fiber that you need. The fresh fruits and vegetables are good high fiber snack ideas. Trail mixes are quite good. That's one of the things I do have in my book for one of my recipes. Dried fruits, high fiber cereals with milk, high fiber cereal bars, and nuts in limited amounts. And when I say limited amounts, it's really important not to be consuming more than 100 calories for women for a snack of nuts, and about 150 calories for men, where if you go beyond that, then the calories start to become quite excessive. The next mineral is calcium. Calcium is really essential. We always think of maintaining and forming your teeth and your bones, but it's also important in clotting of blood, normal heartbeat, and also secreting hormones in your body. The dietary sources of calcium that we think of most commonly are milk, yogurt, and cheese. Other foods include tofu, sardines, salmon with bones, almonds, broccoli, and collards, and fortified foods that include cereals, breads, drinks, and snacks. The calcium requirements, I have included those for adults. Adults 19 to 50 years of age need about 1,000 milligrams a day. Adults over 50 years, about 1,200. And we have to take into consideration if a woman is taking estrogen. If she is, it's about 1,000 milligrams. If she's not, you need to be taking about 1,500 milligrams. And one of the things about calcium supplements most doctors are aware of and considering when they're telling women to supplement their calcium is that you should not be supplementing more than 500 milligrams a day. And I told you to keep in mind a blood vessel. If you eat more than that from a calcium supplement, it'll tend to clog up the blood vessel. It'll attach to the side of the blood vessel and make it difficult for the blood to go through the blood vessel itself. And then, of course, we need vitamin D. That's crucial for calcium absorption, and in particular in the Midwest, where it's so cold and we have periods of darkness where we're not getting enough sunlight. Sugar is a big concern in the United States, and it's been estimated that Americans consume about 100 pounds of sugar a day and sweeteners each year. And that is equivalent to about 30 teaspoons a day, which in my mind is really, really excessive. Nowadays, we're really recommending no more than about 6 to 10 teaspoons of sugar a day. And if you can limit that, that would be even better. Risks of sugar use, we all know about tooth decay. Overloading the liver can cause fatty liver and also liver damage and insulin resistance. Years ago, we never talked. I remember telling my patients, you don't get diabetes from eating sugar. Now we've found that that is not true. You can develop diabetes by eating too much sugar. Risks of sugar use include obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer due to inflammation. Sugar causes inflammation in the body. And of course, sugar is highly addictive due to dopamine in the brain. So if you eat a lot of sugar, your brain gets a signal and it's hard to stop. And the risk of type 2 diabetes with soda pop, we've found that if you consume 1 soda pop a day, it can increase your risk of type 2 diabetes by about 30%. And that's quite frightening when you think about it. I want to talk a little bit about the terrible threes, get a whole new look. And these 3 foods include whole milk, eggs, and butter. And I'm sure you've heard in the news probably throughout your lifetime, for some of you, that you should watch whole milk. You really need to stick with skim or low fat. You should not be eating a lot of eggs, and you need to watch the use of butter. It's really important, and what's come out, which I think is pretty amazing because we always poo-pooed the use of whole milk, is that the whole milk contains more than just saturated fat. It contains 62% of saturated fat, 30% of monosaturated fat, 4% of polyunsaturated fat, and it also has about 400 fatty acids, among which is conjugated linoleic acid, which decreases heart disease and cancer risk. And that has become a really, really big factor when you consider the use of fat in the diet or in milk products. We have found, the research has shown that the recommendation to give children skim milk, and actually this was one of Michelle Obama's big initiatives, led to children developing obesity. And the fats in milk and cheese help absorb fat-soluble vitamins. And fat in milk also helps with satiety. So many of these kids, after their lunch, were feeling hungry because that lack of fat from the milk was making them feel hungry until they got home for their snack. The thing that I always find very interesting is some schools, the kids I know in some of our local schools, I know in particular high schools, some of the kids were getting their lunches at 10:40 in the morning, and then they weren't getting a chance to get a snack until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were sitting there starved. The fat in whole milk and dairy will help lower blood pressure, lower heart disease, and lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes. Some of the thoughts about eggs. The research that was done with the Nurses' Health Initiative found that eggs are a good source of nutrients, and they have not been found to increase cardiovascular disease. They are low in saturated fat, but they're high in cholesterol. And if you can, omega eggs are a healthier choice, in particular for those people that have heart or diabetes or family history. Eggs contain about 213 milligrams cholesterol. Years ago, we used to think that they contain more, about 255 milligrams. Further investigation found it was far lower. Eating that egg a day does not increase your heart attack risk. And eggs that contain lutein and zeaxanthin help decrease macular degeneration risk in elderly patients. Those with diabetes and increased LDLs or bad cholesterol need to restrict their eggs to 3 per week. As far as butter is concerned, it's okay if you use in moderation. Before, we would say it was a definite no-no. It has about 100 calories in a tablespoon or 45 calories in a teaspoon. Excuse me. Fat, it has 11 grams in a tablespoon, or we think of 5 grams of fat in a teaspoon. Saturated fat, about 7 grams, and about 2.5 grams of saturated fat in a teaspoon. 30 milligrams of cholesterol in a tablespoon, and that would be about 10 milligrams of cholesterol in a teaspoon. There's no additives, it's all natural. And again, that fatty acid, conjugated linoleic acid, will decrease heart risk if it's eaten in small amounts. Again, if you start eating large amounts of your butter, it's going to increase your calorie levels, and that's something we really don't want. As far as what I recommend for your diet, I think that's important to consider, are the fact that we, again, going along with Michael Pollan, we should be eating as much real unprocessed foods as we possibly can. We need to be watching the portions, because the larger your portions, the greater the chance of obesity. we need to be eating mostly plants. That is the healthiest way to eat. And I think, again, it's very important. I think with the whole concept of diet, diet is always considered the four-letter word. And I think a better way to look at diet is more like your nutrition plan rather than a diet. It's a healthy way of eating. And you want to enjoy what you're eating. You don't want it to be drudgery when you're preparing a meal or planning your weekly meals. And the other thing I think is important is you want to enjoy your favorite foods occasionally. You want to eat food joyfully. You don't want to spend your time worrying about what you're putting in your mouth every time you eat, because it's just a really unhealthy situation. As far as my book is concerned, I'm going to put some ways you can get this book on Amazon. It's present in ebook form. It's also at the Elgin Library. You can also get it in paperback form. And there's a lot more information in the book than what we've covered. This was just a thumbnail of what is included in the book. There are recipes, there are meal plans, there are suggestions for how to make your shopping more easy, how you can put together your, mostly your dinners, because those are the most time intensive, so that you can sit down to a dinner. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hot meal, but wind up sitting down to a meal that's going to be nutritious and also something that you'll enjoy eating. And I think also we have to keep in mind for many kids who do get the school lunch program that sometimes it's better to think of the lunch as your children's dinner. And when you get to dinner, there's really no reason why you can't give your child a sandwich and a piece of fruit. That's really quite adequate. And also milk. If you can, I'd really appreciate it if you could like my Facebook page, Too Busy to Diet. You can purchase the book again, as I mentioned, in Kindle or paperback form at Amazon. If you have any questions, you could email me at dietking1@comcast.net. That might be to ask me a question. It might be to find out what things you think should be on my blog, things that you have questions on, and you might want to sign up for more information. One of the things, I will be having a blog. One of the unfortunate things was in October with that big malware situation from China, my website was hacked, and I'm in the process of getting it redone. You could also follow me at Twitter at Too Busy to Diet, and you can go to Facebook at Too Busy to Diet. So I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight, and I'd like to open this up to questions at this time. And I want to make sure, I don't know